working on my next book, which until I come up with a better title is Laws of Life 3. When I was putting that book together, I was, as I always do, kind of referring back to personal stories so things are actually real. And I wanted to quote something that an old friend named Patrick Seaman said. And I had the quote right, but I wasn't sure about the year. So I wanted to check the timeline. So I looked him up. I hadn't talked to him in probably 3 or 4 or 5 years, and found that information, but also found out he had this new book coming out called Streaming Wars. So I instantly ordered it, started reading it, and it was like traveling through my past, the ancient past, the Jack Spirko that designed networks and data centers and put fiber optics all over Dallas. That Jack, the one you don't know but you occasionally hear about. And it was like reliving that. But then I kind of really, even though I lived through it, I kind of started to really re-understand, because I guess I understood at the time, but you forget things. Modern technology we take for granted today. When I was working with Patrick and Curtis Rogers and other people over at Broadcast down in downtown Dallas, that was the dawning of all the things that we just take for granted. Like the fact that I'm streaming to you live right now on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook and other places. Like, you didn't just do that back then. You stuck a disc in your thing, and it's like, you know, you installed the software, and then you dialed this thing up, and you heard that awful handshake. You've got mail. Like, it was those days. And for those, and I've heard from some of you, like, all Mark Cuban did was sell a domain name to Yahoo. You have no idea. These folks streamed the first Super Bowl over dial-up to 500,000 people. And the guy I'm about to bring on would land in a city where they were setting some up, and his first stop was Radio Shack. And he'll even tell you why he used to break into Mark Cuban's house today and more. But the big thing is to understand this amazing technology we have, where it came from, where it's going, and how you guys out there, because many of you, as part of the lifestyle design we teach here, are in business for yourself. And you're, even if you're not creators, like that's not your primary business, you're using creator technology to market your business, or you should be, because I'm telling you, it's the most powerful marketing that we have. Even though we stream video, I know most of you do something, and that's why the original name of broadcast.com was AudioNet. You don't watch me. You're not here to see my Santa beard I'm growing for this year for fun for the kids. No. You have another tab open, you're doing other things, and you're listening. Audio is the most powerful form of marketing there is, even if it's part of video. We're going to talk about all of that and more in just a moment. Before we do, let's go ahead and hear from our sponsors of the day today, starting off today with Above Phone. If you go over to the Above Phone website, you will find an entire new way to control your technology. Above Phone gives you the ability to maker and the app manufacturer. And even if you're not ready to step into an Above Phone yet, you should get over to abovephone.com/TSP today and request their 5 must-change privacy settings. It's free. Even if you're going to keep that Android the way it is or your iPhone, you need to know about this. And they'll tell you at no cost whatsoever. If you do decide you want an Above Phone, you can get one for $75 off any phone that they have if you're a member of my members program. And they have other great things like the Above tablet and the Above book. I love my Above book. It's a totally new way to do things, and you have your own private app store. But what if I need this app that's only available in the official app store? You can still use it. You can still install it, and you can put it in jail. What does that mean? It means you take it out, you let it do what it does, and when you're not using it, it goes back in jail, and it can't track you and collect all your data. It's a really cool company. We're grateful to have them as a partner. Check them out today at abovephone.com. Next up, that was the high tech. Here's the low tech. What's more low tech than a dog? But dogs are man's best friend. They've been with us for over 10,000 years. That's why they are our best friend. But, well, your best friend can do things like eat your wife's purse, kill your chickens, get out and do problems with the neighbors, jump all over people, etc. Those are behavioral problems. If a dog has a behavioral problem, the owner has a training problem. If you go to canineacademy.us, you will learn how to train your dog by being trained by a great trainer named Joel Riles. Joel's a personal friend. Our Malinois Shepherd Cross Bell came from his protection line. Amazing dogs, amazing training. And you can go over there again today, k9academy.us, and sign up for the problem-solving library. Learn how to train that basic core things that stops these problems for free. If you like what you learned from Joel, then you can take the more advanced courses, and whether you want a sporting dog, a hunting dog, a homestead dog, a protection dog, the core obedience course is where it all starts, because they all need to learn that. Get on over there today and learn how to have a better dog by being a better dog owner. With that, I'm really excited to bring our special guest on right now, Patrick Seaman. Patrick, welcome to the show, and good to talk to you after all these years.
It's great talking with you, Jack. Good to see you again.
Absolutely, man. So we're going to start this interview at the dawn of streaming, which everybody takes for granted today. But I want to go back just for a couple minutes, like your 2-minute audio that became podcast.com. You go, because your story goes back into at least the 80s. What was your professional background that led you eventually to get tied in with Mark and his other partner?
The partner was Todd Wagner. Yeah. I started out, I was a math major. So I did Department of Defense stuff for a company called Teledyne Geotech. We did some really interesting things for DARPA. I worked in the electric power industry. I worked for LTV, defense industry, another defense industry company. And when JCPenney moved down from New York, I actually lived in Manhattan for a while, transitioning the company to move down to Plano, because all the IT people, they didn't need to move. So somebody had to debrief all of them and document all their stuff that they had done and figure out how to make things work after the company moved. So I did that for several years, and after several years at JCPenney, I was so, let's say, unhappy in the corporate environment that was already trying to do too much, worrying too much about corporate re-education and not enough about business, that I threatened to start wearing a kilt to work. That's a whole nother story. But I had started my own software company on the side. I was consulting, and I left and started consulting full time. And my first really big customer ended up being Mark Cuban and Todd Wagner.
Okay. Again, you were there at the beginning of internet streaming, when there was none, and then there was you guys. What was it like trying to stream audio over dial-up, and how did you overcome those earlier challenges? And we have I would say my audience is probably 60% people, 70, maybe % people that even remember what dial-up was.
Yeah. And
probably 30 to 40%, my younger crowd, they know of it, but they never heard. I was a kid in the 80s, and we were using Commodores to dial into message boards and stuff. They don't know any. They have no real appreciation for what it was like.
Yeah, I was a big BBSer, before all of this, and people don't know what BBSs were.
No.
It was the internet before the internet, and the technology was very immature. It was raw. It broke all the time. There were no standards. There were multiple competing technologies that were trying to do things, and they all had different business models. Some of them were more, we're trying to build a standard, and it's very rigid, and and then there were more commercially oriented, efforts and so on. So it was a mess. And understand that there was no live at first. You had to encode it, and then you could stream it.
Mm-hmm.
So even before live, we had to encode it. So our first business model was we were going to do 5 color sports commentary from radio stations for college sports, and so we had to record, the color commentary, like recorded on a tape recorder.
Yeah.
And play it. But the software broke all the time. The PCs, were, very early. You're talking, 1994, 1995, era PCs. So, and I couldn't afford to buy, the good stuff. So I was, buying Packard Bell or whatever we could find and steal and, use to do stuff. And so everything was honestly duct tape and baling wire.
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to describe it. So, like, this almost cheapens what you said because it didn't work the way that it does now. But it was just for people out there that are not of the time. It was more like Netflix is today, where you were you're streaming a movie, but the movie was there on a drive somewhere. Again, it had to be encoded and compressed because they were going over, 58K. Wow, like that was just
if you were lucky. Most people had 14.4.
Yeah, that's true. At the very beginning.
At the very beginning. Now it evolved quickly.
Yeah.
The technology, that's one of the things is the technology evolved very, very fast. We called the company AudioNet, and because no one really expected that video would happen as soon as it did. There was just it kept changing so fast. It's like music. I brought a. You remember used to have CD jukeboxes. You push the button and a little tray would come out, and you could put like 4 or 5 audio CDs.
Yep.
In a tray.
Yeah.
And it would go back in and play. Well, I brought mine from home and plugged it in and just plugged in some CDs and put it up to say, because we were always trying something new. It was always, because every day we had to do something new. We were always having to innovate. So, I put that up and it was like, no one's going to care. It blew our bandwidth out. It exploded. The whole premise of what we were doing was people were used to, at the time, there was no on demand. TV was linear. You had TV. The show played whenever it played. You couldn't watch it when you wanted it, unless you had a VHS tape, which would have been after the fact. So everything was linear. There was no on demand.
Yeah.
You had to go to the video store. If you wanted to rent a movie, you had to drive somewhere and get a tape and bring it back. There was no on demand. And so what we discovered was this huge demand for on demand. And initially it was sports, because someone, hey, I wanted to, I'm an SMU grad and I'm living, in New York, and I can't listen to my SMU game, because it wasn't one of the big ones, that was on network. So people were tuning in and listening. We had people tuning in all over the world. Some of our first listeners were because they couldn't get it. And, we didn't have, I mean, the whole satellite thing wasn't even until later. So, what we were discovering was this demand for people wanted this on-demand concept. And it evolved beyond sports into every form of entertainment, every form of content, and whether from bowling to you name it, it was everything. And people were discovering that they could, wow, you mean I can listen. At first it was listen, and later it was watch, but I can actually get what I want when I want it. This was new.
So, what made broadcast different from early players like real networks and what?
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked about how one of the things people never saw was every time I walked into that facility, one of the things I saw were dudes with headsets on selling radio stations to service.
Yeah.
Like one thing is that you guys had customers and users, right? But there was some technical differences too.
There was a big difference. The competitors that we had, in particular, Rob Glazer at Real got jealous of what we were doing, tried to compete with us, and basically they all treated it like they were a technology company, not a broadcaster. And what I instilled in my guys was, we're a broadcaster. If someone's listening to or watching a broadcast, you can't just, oh, gee, guess what? The encoder died, so we've got to reboot the computer. So come back in 5 minutes and reconnect. No, it's got to be up. It's got to work. So what we engineered into everything was multiple levels of redundancy. So it would fail over. It didn't always work, but it worked a hell of a lot better than anybody else. And whether we were doing a live event or whether it was our hosted events, we had multiple telco connections. We had multiple encoders, we had multiple servers. Basically, I built the first CDN, content delivery network, because we found that we needed to have servers that were closer to the end user, so it was fewer hops. The internet wasn't what it is now, so we had to get that stream closer to the user, and then we would direct them to the closest stream. So we were constantly working to make sure that as much as possible that we eliminated problems and drops and
which I just said to the audience, Patrick, basically tech was the means, broadcast products, right? And they should apply that to their business, even if they're in a different business, right? Don't confuse the means by which you deliver your product with your product.
Yes, and that was really key. Was it was and it's very much like it is now with what's going on with current technologies. The people who were copying us were so focused on technology and some widget, some trying to do something different, and they were all focused on the hardware. They were all focused on the software. They weren't focused on the product. The product was the broadcast.
Gotcha. You kind of created the first streaming pre-roll ad, which has become like a major monetization strategy. You guys monetize content, but how the industry monetizes content?
Well, it was a self-defense act, because what was happening was, and keep in mind, again, this is early days with technology, and it was possible for people to actually steal our streams. So we had people who would deep link our streams and pretend that they were theirs.
Huh.
and try to monetize our streams that we were paying for. So we're paying for the stream, we're paying for the broadcast, and they were basically stealing our content. So we didn't have a lot of ways to deal with that because we had so much going on. We had so many streams and thousands of streams that what I did was I said, well, okay, fine. You're going to steal our stream. Guess what? I'm going to put an ad in front of that. And whenever you deep link my stream, you're going to do it. So I went out to my car. I had a little tape recorder, a little curl recorder, a little micro cassette tape recorder. I went out to my car. I still have the file. And I recorded a 7-second spot.
Okay.
Said, thank you for listening to AudioNet, the broadcast network on the internet at www.audionet.com. And it played in front of every stream. And so everybody would know that, hey, at least what
the modern version of back of the book marketing from the 70s.
Robert Davidman actually then went out and started selling that spot. So he has the credit as the person who first sold a pre-roll ad, and took that. And so, we ended up, that little spot didn't last for very long because to help you understand, the bandwidth was so expensive. That was our biggest cost, was bandwidth. It was very expensive to do what we did. That even that 7-second spot times thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of streams adds up. So, we had to replace it with, we were forced to replace it with paid spots. Pre-roll ad. Thank you, Patrick Seaman, for, ruining your life. Yes, I invented the pre-roll ad.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, some of the customers I had for their wide area network out were purchasing things like 128K ISDN service. Right? People don't get.
Yes, I had that at home with a Cisco. Yeah. I had a Cisco router and ISDN at home. And in fact, when we built our this started out, I had Mark had LexisNexis at his house, so he had ISDN at his house, so he had a bandwidth there. So I was able to use that bandwidth. So that's why I was going to his house. The other thing is he had a bachelor pad that he was getting set up down on Elm Street in Deep Ellum near downtown Dallas. And I had an ISDN line run into there. And so I started taking over that space and eventually kicked him out and turned that into our first broadcast center. So, bandwidth was very, very expensive. And so, we started out uploading via ISDN, and I had servers down at PicNet, which was an ISP, internet service provider, down in Park Central Towers, north of Dallas. And so that's where we were. I was constantly driving back and forth between PicNet, Mark's house, and Elm Street.
So you mentioned Mark there. Tell people real quick why you used to break into his house.
Mark, well, I set up, I was encoding off of stuff, so I had radios set up, and so I'd have an analog radio with a 1/8 inch jack running out of the radio into an encoder, and I'm encoding on this encoder that's connected into his ISDN, so I can have bandwidth. But to do that, I had to get into his house. Well, Mark and Todd would go off to try to raise money, so they're like in New York or wherever, and it's like, okay, Patrick, I need to go down to Mark's house. And Mark never locked his door. He didn't lock his door. so he said, Patrick, go, just go in, Well, Mark's brother would go lock his door. So I would have to break in. And so Mark had a rotted out ladder. So it's only one side of the ladder with a stick with rungs on it. And so I climbed up to the second story and broke into his house frequently doing that. On one occasion, I'm there at his house. And now this is long before Mark had, was married or anything. So I recall two very attractive. I'm convinced to this day they were cheerleaders at a professional level. Cheerleader, like who walked in and they looked at me and said, "You're not Mark."
Oh God, I don't think that's in the book. Yahoo ended up purchasing broadcast for like $5.7 billion.
Yep.
It's known as one of the biggest blunders of the .com era, and I believe it is, but I don't believe the purchase was the problem. Can you kind of talk about what happened after?
Short version, there was no integration. There was no synergy plan. I went out to meet with them, and their attitude was like, and I'm basically oversimplifying, as you can imagine. Well, we're Yahoo. Who are you? We just bought you. Go away. We have food tables. We're cool. Yeah. It was a stock thing. Hey, streaming, check mark to the investors. I'm oversimplifying, but basically there was no real. By the time of the merger, we were like maybe a quarter away from being in the black. We had revenue. We were on a path. And we were the largest aggregator and distributor of audio and video on the planet. I'm not talking about on the internet.
I understand.
Okay. So we were huge. There's a reason why our first capital investors were Motorola and Intel. I was doing broadcasts for Intel, and they came up and said, well, how are you doing, our broadcasts? And so I told them, I said, well, I built everything using Windows NT as our backend servers because I didn't want to use, Sun, or anything else, because I can have 2 or 3 Windows, NT servers for the cost of, a Unix server, not to mention how expensive Unix, admins were. And the Windows NT was click. So it was cheap. So we built our whole back end on an Intel infrastructure, to which Intel said, "Really?"
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why Intel was very, involved with us, because they saw what we were doing as a motivation for getting people to buy faster PCs, because they weren't selling PCs, they were selling chips. Their goal was to sell the faster chip that someone would put in their computer, that a Dell or whoever would, would sell. So because, you want to do this streaming media thing, you need a faster PC. Well, guess what? That means Intel sells more chips. So, that was with Yahoo. They had there was no synergy plan, and so yes, they did integrate. Yes, they did some things, but they just didn't understand what it was that we did. They didn't honestly understand that as a platform, Yahoo was already dead, because all it was a portal.
Yeah. It seemed to me, Patrick, that Yahoo messed up everything.
Yahoo was where all startups that got acquired to them went to die.
They were the only competitor in another space, the Google AdSense space.
Yeah.
And they had Yahoo Publisher, and they screwed that royally. And then once they died, Google just screwed every publisher that was running their ads. Like it was like because I was doing it. I was making a lot of money with it. And as soon as Yahoo folded, Google just cut the payouts by like 90%. And there was nothing you could do about it. They screwed that up. They screwed up the broadcast acquisition. They brought all sorts of small startups that were in the blogging space. They screwed. It was like they could not screw something. You said there was no integration or right when the acquisition happened. I worked with Nordex, and we made yellow cable with purple Yahoo stamped on it for the data center. That was to me, that was the fullest part of it. That was the most integration they ever did. It was like they wanted to lose money. I don't really understand it.
I just think at the highest level, they just didn't see the forest for the trees. They didn't understand that their own model was honestly, 3 or 4 years dead already. They were a dinosaur and didn't know it. Now, obviously, I'm rather opinionated, and I'm oversimplifying a lot of things, and there were a lot of other things that went on. In terms of what happened, they're one of the big things that I won't go into a lot of detail here. I'll send you to my book to read. But there was a deal, with Blockbuster that was going to, that basically had Blockbuster done what Blockbuster was trying to do, you would never have heard of Netflix. But but Blockbuster got in bed with the wrong people, didn't understand what was happening, and they got screwed, and everybody got burned on streaming, and it kind of turned people off for a while, and that was a contributing factor to a lot of what happened. There's a whole story behind it. I have a whole chapter on it. I had an interview with Jim Pease, the former CEO of Blockbuster and 7-Eleven, where we went in depth about what happened. But that's a whole that would be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that went on. There's a lot that happened that people don't know.
But Yahoo didn't have to screw it up. Like I think the Blockbuster thing was a combination of the Enron involvement and that really poured vinegar in the milk.
Yes.
But on top of it, because of their model, because of their way of doing things, I think they were also like the cart before the horse, where Yahoo was in a space where they could have taken this and they could have turned it into everything that Netflix and YouTube are today combined.
Keep in mind, we were doing the stuff that, what happened in 2004 with YouTube, where, what was it, an elephant video? It was some silly little video. Okay, think about how that got started versus where we were at the pinnacle of internet broadcasting in 1999, when we were the largest aggregator and distributor of audio and video on the planet, and even 4 years later, by 2004, YouTube was just at its very earliest nothing beginning.
Yeah.
It took years to recover from where we had it to where, it eventually evolved. But it took years to recover from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of it, the people don't understand, I guess, is that you guys had it wasn't just you were streaming content, you had content libraries, you had agreements, You had contracts with content providers. You had this entire library, and it was building. And so not only did that all rot away when y'all didn't, curate and continue to build those relationships, a lot of providers of content were like, well, no, F this. Like, we're not the way to deliver content.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had the largest satellite farm, in the Southwest. It was ridiculous. We were pulling in content, from satellite. We were, pulling in content point to point. We had, one of the things that we did that I don't think people understand. We set up a network of, I don't know what the final number was, hundreds and hundreds of radio stations across the country, where we set a server. And that's how we built that first content delivery network, was by going out. We would have to set up, an encoder and server out remotely in all these cities across the country in order to get the radio signal. Because think about it, it's radio. I can't get Des Moines, I have to be there. So I have to encode it there. So how do I do that? Well, I've got to have an encoder / server there. Okay, well, that's fine, but I still have to get the signal. So that means I have to build a network to get that signal into my infrastructure, into my content delivery network, which grew up over the entire country. So we built this not just countrywide, but around the world. I was setting up these encoders and servers and going into server farms all over the world. I went through 2 passports because I was traveling. I was never home, forever. And so, that's how we built this global network, of servers and encoders, to acquire the content and then deliver it at an edge close to the consumer, to the user, who was still, by the end of 1999, most people were still on some form of dial-up, or if they weren't on dial-up, they were on, DSL. And keep in mind, DSL back then, you had to be close to the substation for it to be any good. So we did not have broadband. So we built all of this pre-broadband. We did all of this pre-smartphone, pre-3G, pre-4G, pre-5G. Yeah. You didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did it first. We did all the stuff that people didn't do again for years and years. From the Super Bowl to Victoria's Secret, broadcasts. Just these insane broadcasts that we did. The people, like you said, 500,000 people tuning in on dial-up. For the Super Bowl. I think it was even more for Victoria's Secret. It was crazy.
Yeah. I've got people telling me in the live stream right now that we're glitching out like it's 1990. I don't really know what to do about it. It's like the universe is playing a sick joke for me. I've got like the father of streaming on, and my stream shit. So I apologize to everybody for that, and I know it's not getting any better. There's part of me that wants to kill this and reestablish the stream. Sometimes that helps.
Sure.
Are you okay with that? What I can do is I can email, and you guys, you're going to have to go to my YouTube channel because I can't put it back out. But this is killing me, and I don't even know how bad the audio file is going to be when I extract it. But let's do that. If you check your email, I will have it over to you in just a minute, and we'll do a part 2 and continue the interview, because I really do feel like God's like, hey, you know what would be fun? Because I hear you fine, and I think you hear me fine.
I've got zero problems here.
Usually when this happens, it's not the case. Like, I can see the problem in the back, and I don't see it. So I'm going to kick you out. I'll send you that new link in just a second.
Okay.